Hello and good morning. Good morning once again. As usual, I know now you know my name. My name is Wayne Maganishko. Uh, it is night time here where I am. I know it is morning there. However, I would like us to continue to our lesson number 4. And today, again, we shall discuss types of terrorism. And I will be very brief in this presentation. I try to make my presentations very brief and straight to the point so that I also give you room to research and to learn and to develop yourself. As a security professional, you should always work hard to develop yourself. Work hard to develop yourself. Each day is a learning day. Ensure that you learn something new each day. Ensure that you learn something new each day. Ensure that you stay focused and ensure that you become a quality security professional. That is our our aim, our motive at the Brand Institute of Forensics and Security. So welcome again to today's lesson, which is types of terrorism, and we will go straight to the slides. Um, we shall say that there are 6 types of terrorism. According to the National Advisory Committee on Criminal Justice Standards and Goals, there are 6 distinctive types of terrorism. All of them share the common traits of being violent acts that destroy property, invoke fear, and attempt to harm the lives of civilians. You remember when we talked about characteristics of terrorism in lesson 2, we said that violence, fear, destruction of property, death, these are some of the constant factors or the constant characteristics of terrorism, that they will always be there. Terrorism will always come with fear, outrage, shock, violence. People will suffer anxiety. People will suffer doubt. People will suffer death and even serious body injuries. So you see that those characteristics also come up when we discuss the 6 types of terrorism. Number 1 is a civil disorder. Civil disorder can be described as a form of terrorism. Civil disorder is sometimes a violent form of protest held by a group of individuals, usually in opposition to a political policy or action. Civil disorder, it is just a protest, but when it turns to violence and people die and people are seriously injured and property is destroyed, then it is regarded as civil disorder, is regarded as a form of terrorism. They are intended to send a message to a political group that the people are unhappy and demand change. The protests are intended to be non-violent, but they do sometimes result in large riots in which private property is destroyed and civilians are injured or even killed. You have seen protests in our republic due to political situation. You know, our country is not very stable politically. We are always divided. We are always divided into two, with one group alleging political injustices against those in power. You know very well that these riots usually happen and they cause destruction of property, they cause injuries to people, and even they cause even death. So civil disorder is number 1 type of terrorism. Number 2 is political terrorism. Political terrorism is used by one political function to intimidate another. One political function to intimidate another. Although government leaders are the ones who are intended to receive the ultimate message, it is the citizens who are targeted with violent acts. Remember the triangle that A attacks B to coerce C to change their position or to change their ideology or to force C to meet their demands. Now, when we talk about politics, it is although the government leaders are the ones who are intended to receive ultimate message, it is the citizens who are targeted with violent attacks. Political terrorists sometimes harbor nationalistic aims, but these motivations are more clearly considered as a separatist terrorism. Political terrorism may be waged by extremist groups on either end of the political spectrum, more often described as left-wing or right-wing terrorist groups. Research on that, right-wing and left-wing terrorist groups. You can research and find out. Mostly these have been mentioned in countries abroad, so you do your own research and find out about left-wing and right-wing terrorist groups. Non-political terrorism. This is the third one. So the first one is civil disorder. Second one is political terrorism. And then we look at non-political terrorism. Non-political terrorism is a terrorist act carried out by a group for any other purpose, most often a religious nature. The desired goal is something other than political objective, but the tactics involved are the same. The tactics are the same. Violence, fear, injury to people, injury to innocent civilians. The tactics used are the same. However, non-political terrorism, the desired goal is something other than a political objective, but the tactics involved are the same. And then we have quasi-terrorism. Quasi-terrorism is a violent act that utilizes the same methods terrorists employ, but does not have the same motivating factors. Cases like this usually involve an armed criminal who is trying to escape from law enforcement, utilizing civilians as hostages to help them escape. The lawbreaker is acting in a similar manner to a terrorist, but terrorism is not the goal. So this is a lawbreaker who maybe he is armed and he is taking civilians as hostages, and it may lead to a lot of violence, it may lead to death, it may lead to destruction of property, but the aim is not terrorism. The goal is not terrorism. The goal is a criminal act, but he utilizes methods similar to those used by terrorists. And then there is a limited political terrorism. Limited political terrorism acts are generally one-time only plots to make a political or ideological statement. The goal is not to overthrow the government, but to protest a government policy or action. So this is limited political terrorism. Acts are generally one-time only plots to make a political or ideological statement. The goal is not to overthrow the government, but to protest a government policy or action. When we talk about this, think in terms of our context in Kenya and what is happening every day. As I've mentioned, you know the type of political situation, political environment, political atmosphere, what is happening in our country. So relate these things to actual events that are happening in our republic. And then methods of violence. Every type of terrorism utilizes distinct methods of violence to get their message across. They can be anything from assault weapons or explosive devices to toxic chemicals that are released into the air. These attacks may occur at any time or place, which makes them an extremely effective method of instilling terror and uncertainty into the general public. I hope we are together up to that point. You hear that these attacks may occur at any time or place, which makes them an extremely effective method of instilling fear and terror and shock and uncertainty into the general public. You remember we spoke about terrorism can occur anytime. Terrorism can occur anywhere. Terrorism can occur, it can target anybody. It is only the terrorists who know the time of attack, the choice of target, and the method of attack. So the methods of violence actually leads to a lot of terror, a lot of fear, a lot of anger and shock into the public. You saw what happened at Westgate, as I mentioned in lesson 1 and in lesson 2 also. It was a moment of shock, a moment of despair for those people who were found in the situation. Terrorism in Kenya I hope you guys did the assignment, and I hope you have gathered some facts about the attacks that we have faced. And I want to tell you that it is quiet now. It's very quiet since the Tusi attack. And we say that when it is quiet like this, then we need to be extra careful. Wherever you work, whatever you do, be extra careful. Because usually when it is quiet like this, then something is happening. Something is likely to happen. Either the terrorists are planning, they are gathering intelligence, or they are now actively preparing to stage an attack. So we have said one of the characteristics of terrorism is that it can happen anywhere, it can happen anytime. I urge you as a security professional to always be on the lookout, to always be on the lookout, always be on the lookout. High alert. Kenya remains in a state of heightened alert following travel warnings by France, US, and European Union officials of imminent terrorist attacks. Kenya has suffered deadly attacks claimed by the Somali Islamist group Al Shabaab. As a result, it has beefed up security. We have beefed up our security. We'll cover more under lesson 9 on how we have beefed up our security and on how the government strategy to prevent terrorism, how the government using the security agencies, how the government coordinates its activities. I hope that Fred can organize that you can cover these two lessons this weekend. If you can cover these two lessons this weekend, lesson 4 and then lesson 3 and lesson 4, it will be very nice so that we have ample time, because I have a lot of information to share with you guys as we move along. So if we can create time, it will be very important. That is why I'm reducing the slides to just minimal slides to open your mind to share with you the ideas so that we may have room to talk specifically, to learn about the strategies that are used in fighting terrorism, in countering terrorism. I also want to talk specifically on your role as a security professional in counterterrorism. You as a security professional in counterterrorism, what is your role? This is my main aim, so that you operate at a level that you understand this is my role. Because when it comes to terrorism, there are issues that, for example, investigating terrorism, all we can do as a private security officers is to provide information to the police. However, it is the responsibility of the government itself to investigate terrorism. Under the law, you cannot investigate terrorism as a private security official. The only thing you can do is to safeguard, to gather information, and to share information, and to say something about what is happening. And if something goes wrong, then you can run, you can hide, and if you cannot hide, you can run, and if you cannot run, then you have no alternative but to fight. So my aim is that as we move along, as we go ahead, we cover these initial topics, the introductory topics, in a very short period, so that we can focus on some other detailed information in the coming weeks. Terrorism in the U.S. context. Protecting the United States from terrorist attacks is the FBI's #1 priority. I talk about the US, not other countries, because the US is the country that gives us a lot of support when it comes to issues in protecting our public against acts of terrorism. Kenya government partners a lot with the US government and the UK government in a preparedness and in protecting the people against acts of terrorists. We get a lot of funding, a lot of trainings, a lot of engagement from the US government and from the UK government. So when I speak about the US government in these issues, you understand it is because we have a very good working relationship with the US when it comes to issues related to terror. The FBI works closely with its partners to neutralize terrorist cells and operatives here in the United States, to help dismantle extremist networks worldwide, and to cut off financing and other forms of support provided to foreign terrorist organizations. Here in the US, terrorism is defined into two types. This is international terrorism and domestic terrorism. International terrorism is violent criminal acts committed by individuals or groups who are inspired by or associated with designated foreign terrorist organizations or nation state-sponsored. Violent criminal acts committed by individuals and or groups who are inspired by or associated with designated foreign terrorist organizations or nations or Islamic or state-sponsored. Domestic terrorism. Domestic terrorism are violent or criminal acts committed by individuals and or groups to further ideological goals stemming from domestic influences such as those of a political, religious, social, racial, or environmental nature. So you can see there is international terrorism, state-sponsored, and then there is domestic terrorism. Domestic terrorism, they base their goals, ideological goals, stemming from domestic influences, such as those of a political, religious, social, racial, or environmental nature. The current threat, the FBI is committed to remaining agile in its approach to the terrorist threat, which has continued to evolve since the September 11, 2010 attacks. You know about the September 11. This is something that I think everybody knows about this incident all over the world. There has been a lot of conspiracy theories. However, we still know that the attack actually happened. Years after these attacks, the threat landscape has expanded considerably, and international terrorism remains a serious threat. The threat of domestic terrorism also remains persistent overall, with actors crossing the line from exercising First Amendment protected rights to committing crimes in furtherance of violence agendas. So currently, all over the world, we are always on high alert. We have said several times, we keep repeating that terrorism can happen anytime, it can happen anywhere, it can target anybody. So we are on alert 24 hours. You never know when something related to terrorism is likely to happen. Factors contributing to evolution of terrorism. Social media. Now, before we talk about social media, let us talk about many factors have contributed to the evolution of the terrorism threat on both the international and domestic fronts, such as lone offenders. Unlike before, when terrorist acts were planned by terrorist groups, many people planning a single attack. In this age, they are what we call lone offenders. Terrorist threats have evolved from large group conspiracies toward lone offender attacks. An individual person decides to stage a terrorist attack. These individuals often radicalize online and mobilize to violence quickly. Online radicalization. Further again, as we move ahead, I'm going to introduce radicalization. How are people radicalized? And how can you pick the indicators of a person who is being radicalized? Even at your workplace as a security professional, or even in your community, how can you pick the indicators and bring the information to the attention of the police? Without a clear group affiliation or guidance, lone offenders are challenging to identify, investigate, and disrupt. The FBI relies on partnerships and tips from the public to identify these lone attackers. FBI depends on partnership and tips from public to identify these lone attackers. So it is your responsibility also as a role, even in the Kenyan context, to, if you have these tips that these people could be planning an attack, then it is important for you to share this information. During the 1998 Nairobi embassy bombing, there were reports that some people in one neighborhood, I think it is Ngara, where they assembled the truck that they wanted to drive to the basement of the American embassy building at Nairobi. They said that after the attack now, they said, we were seeing these people here with this truck every day. They come in the morning, they go in the evening, they come in. We didn't know that these people were planning attacks. So you can imagine, had those people picked the indicators and reported the matter to the police, then the attack could have been prevented. And remember, we are very lucky. We are very lucky in the sense that what happened is that these guys had an intention of driving the vehicle into the basement. So the emergence of lone offenders or lone attackers has really made the fight against terrorism a very big challenge. Very few people, either one person or two people, can decide on their own to stage a serious terrorist attack. This is something we also have to be on the lookout for. And then also, we say that the internet and social media. The internet and social media, as I have said again, plays a role in radicalization, plays a role in educating the terrorists, plays a role in providing information to the terrorists. The internet is full of information. Nowadays, if you Google any particular facility, your chances of even conducting a thorough study on what is happening at the facility, you can get a lot of information from the internet that you can use to actually stage and organize a terrorist attack. International and domestic violent extremists have developed an extensive presence on the internet through messaging platforms and online images, videos, and publications. This facilitates the group's ability to radicalize and recruit individuals who are receptive to the extremist messaging. Social media has also allowed both international and domestic terrorists to gain unprecedented virtual access to people living in the United States in an effort to enable homeland attacks. Even in Kenya, the Al-Shabaab group, while in Somalia, they are able to carry out research and to carry out studies of facilities in Kenya and come to conclusion that this could be a soft target that if we plan well, we can penetrate and we can stage an attack. This is what happened at the Westgate Mall. They were able to gather information about the Westgate Mall and to penetrate it. And I remember we had done a course at the American Embassy together with the other security managers and the people from the General Service Unit, people from the Rapid Response Unit of the Administration Police, people from the military, and people from the U.S. Embassy. And we had actually done an assessment, a site assessment at the Westgate Mall before the attack. And we had identified and we had recommended the loopholes that need to be sealed. But unfortunately, before the work could be done, the attack happened, and you know how serious it was. The Islamic State of Iraq and Ash-Shan ISIS in particular encourages sympathizers to carry out simple attacks whenever they are located, or to travel to ISIS-held territory in Iraq and Syria and join its ranks as foreign fighters. This message has resonated with supporters in the United States and abroad. I remember also while working in the Republic of Maldives, there were reports that there were some young men who were traveling from Maldives all the way to Syria, all the way to Afghanistan to fight as terrorists. And now, after they had learned a lot while abroad, when they come back home to the Republic of Maldives, now they become a danger. They become a danger to the country and to the people. How citizens can protect themselves and report suspicious activity. It is important for people to protect themselves both online and in person, and to report any suspicious activity they encounter. The simplest ways to accomplish these are to remain aware of your surroundings. Always remain aware of your surroundings. Refrain from oversharing personal information. Now, this is where we have weaknesses, because We share a lot. We share a lot, including myself. We share these social media things you see, Facebook, LinkedIn, WhatsApp, whatever. We share a lot of information about ourselves that we can open a door of becoming a target. So we should refrain from oversharing personal information. Refrain from oversharing personal information, especially you as a security professional. Say something if you see something. Don't be the type of security officers who just sit there and even when things are happening they cannot say anything. Wanasema wacha wakubwa wenyewe watajua. The bosses will know by themselves. Share something, say something. If you suspect something, share something. As I said, I'm going to cover with you a topic on radicalization. It is not part of our training course, but I will share it as an additional information. I want you guys to remind me. I'll share with you radicalization, how to identify, how to pick the indicators, among other things. And then the insular nature of today's violent extremists makes them difficult for law enforcement to identify and disrupt before an attack. Many times, a person's family or friends may be the first to notice a concerning change in behavior that may indicate a person is mobilizing to violence. Families, those people who are close to you, those people who you are working with, are the people who are likely to pick the indicator. So you as a security professional, when even you are at work in the office, you should be looking at the way people are behaving, looking at the way people are talking, looking at the way the messages people are sharing, the videos they are sharing, and you can easily conclude that this person is behaving in a manner likely to indicate that they are radicalized. I hope that where I am, it is night time. It's nighttime, and I hope that you can hear me, or Fred will turn up the volume so that you can hear clearly, because I'm trying to be a little bit low on my volume because it is actually midnight and my colleagues who we stay together are resting. So I don't want to make a lot of noise for them. Also, the matter we are discussing is very sensitive. It is not a matter that we can just discuss in and out. Another thing I want to say, Fred will share with you these presentations. Please secure these presentations. For my own safety, for your safety, and for the safety of the institute. We know we are authorized by the government to train you on terrorism, but then these presentations should not fall in wrong hands. Don't share them with anybody else. Keep them. You can listen to them from time to time. However, secure them. This is confidential Brand Institute of Forensics information. We do a lot of research to come up with these presentations, and if you share them anyhowly, then it is not appropriate. So thank you very much. We will continue to lesson 6 when we meet again. No, lesson 5 when we meet again. So thank you very much, and then have a nice time, and bye bye.